button. Let's see what happens. So, welcome everyone to Breathing Spaces Inspiring People. This is a regular weekly feature where we get to ask people what's inspired them in their life, and also to find out why they are inspiring, because I really truly believe that everyone has got a story to tell. Everyone is inspiring in some manner or the other. So tonight I am very lucky to be joined by Jane Brewster. So welcome to our breathing space, Jane.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's a real pleasure. So to start off with, just tell me, or tell everyone who's watching this, how we got to meet, how you stumbled into breathing space.
Okay, so I stumbled into breathing space and meeting you by doing a Glastonbury weekend this time last year, where we did an in-bolt weekend, which was just amazing. And I guess I stumbled into that space by our mutual friend Steph, who I've been breathing with for probably just over 2 years.
So what made you go to that weekend?
It was my birthday. Yeah, it was my in-bolt birthday, and I'd always want to go to Glastonbury, and I'd been doing I do quite a lot of breathwork with Steph, live breathwork, not just online. And the calling was really great, and I really didn't think I could make it, panicking over money and other things, and I just knew I had to be there, and it was really profound. It was a really really energized weekend, and I had some massive life-changing experiences in there. One of them being I went back to my maiden name, Jane Brewster, and another one where I went right back to my mother's womb, which was profound. Yeah.
So during that weekend a year ago, and I remember it really clearly, you claimed your own name, you claimed your own self, and you had an experience where you went back to your mother's womb.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I can remember sitting in that circle when you asked us. I think it was really simple. It was, "Who are you?" or something very simple, a word like that. And when I can remember Rebecca was sat next to me, and when you came round to me, I almost shouted, "Jane Brewster!" I can feel the energy now, and it was so strong to get back to being who I really am, who I identify with, and not the person whose name I'd taken from my husband and who I'd been acting as. It was a massive, reclaiming my name was massive. It was a simple exercise, but it was a really big statement for me.
Oh, that does sound amazing. So yeah, is it okay if we just talk about that a little bit more? What was it like? What did it feel like to just stand in that moment and realize that's what you needed to do, that's what you needed to say, and when you did it, what did it feel like? Because I'm sure there will be people watching this who will be, who are in a position where they are not themselves and they haven't claimed themselves. Maybe if you could tell people what that feels like to stand up and say that and to claim that power and that identity back again.
There really was a true energy surge that came from nowhere, really from my feet, and I can remember almost screaming my name out and going back to a part of my life where I really owned myself, and it was kind of it was in my childhood. It was probably at the age of around 9 or somewhere, where I really knew who I was, and what I wanted to be and what my purpose was, and I really embodied it. I went right back to that point of and I let go of, in that moment of claiming my name, I let go of a whole heap of my life where I felt oppressed and depressed and violated, and it went just by getting my name back, because I went back to a time of knowing who I was, and not and a place of that childhood authenticity and curiosity, and just owning, just being. I went back to a place of just being in that moment. It was beautiful. It still is beautiful.
And when you describe that, I can really feel it. I can taste it. I can share it, Jane. So, you know, for everyone who is watching this, you know, whenever that is, thank you for sharing that at that kind of moment. So that's how we met. That sounds a really dramatic, powerful way for us to meet, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Well, leading on from that, that was the question I asked you. Who are you? So
who am I?
Yeah. So Jane, tell us about you. What do we need to know about you? Some of the facts, some of the figures, some of the details. Tell us about Jane Brewster.
Right. So I'm a almost 53-year-old single mum with a 19-year-old son. I am a retired psychiatric nurse. I was a psychiatric nurse and an addiction specialist for 30 years. I worked in addictions from the age of 20 until I was 50. Who am I? I kind of dedicated I always knew I wanted to work with people, so I've always worked with people from a very young age, volunteering from the age of probably, I was in the British Red Cross at the age of 10. I was doing voluntary work from about 12 and with people, and always knew that I would work with people, and that's been a driver. I'm from Doncaster originally, now live in Warrington. And yeah, that's the real basics. I've been retired on medical grounds after having depression for quite a long time, which was a real struggle. And it was very scary retiring from an institute like the NHS, which was so secure. And I eventually did it, and it changed my life. And I found that's when I was able to get the money to find healing, and I started doing breath work and things, and looking and trying to find myself. I was well aware I'd lost myself, and I'd become what I just described. Yeah, and not me. I'd become a mum and a nurse and somebody that was very much acting at life. I kind of lost myself in the last 10 years of my career. Yeah, that was.
So that's who you are, Jane. You are a retired single mother of 53. You spent 30 years as a psychiatric nurse. And then after a period of depression, you retired and have started that journey to re-know and reclaim yourself. You were born in Doncaster and you now live in Warrington, and you've got a 19-year-old boy. And I haven't complimented you. You look fabulous this evening, by the way. Thank you. You make me feel like a dirty tramp, really, because I'm still in my kind of driving clothes. You look very fabulously elegant, and I feel like I'm a right gutter snipe. So,
gutter snipe. No, you don't look like a gutter snipe.
I'm actually wearing. This just looks like a normal cap, but this is a Stetson cap that I just bought, and it's a really beautiful cap. So I'm very proud of this cap. But that's the sum of my kind of fanciness tonight. So, okay, what is that? So this urge that or this kind of calling that you've had to help people, like being in the NHS, which I know is the calling for you to have to work in that environment for so long has to be really loud. So let's go back to that young Jane, and let's go back to that 10-year-old, or maybe even before that. Tell me about little Jane. Tell me about what her childhood was like, and then what led up to you feeling that call to go and help people.
Okay. I'm from a fam. I'm the youngest of a of 5 siblings. And on paper, I had a really good childhood. I'm from I'm from a poor council estate, which was quite poor. I can't remember what words Michelle used last week, but my son calls it Beirut and says, "Do we not have to go there?" So it was a hard upbringing. We were poor, and I very much was left alone to get on with life on my own. The other 4 took up a lot of my parents' time, and I did. I just got on with it. I joined lots of groups. I was in every sports team in school. I joined groups. I always wanted to be part of a group. I was a brownie. I was a guide. I was a ranger. I was in the Cubs football team. They needed me. A hockey team, the netball team. I did everything I could to be with people. So I knew I wanted to be with people. At about the age of 9, I can remember having a chat with the lieutenant of our guides, and not long after that she died, and it was really significant. And I just said I wanted to help people and work and make. It sounds so profound, but it was really innocent. I just wanted to make the world a better place for people. I'd seen my brothers were, I felt, lost. They were committing crimes. They were causing havoc in our home life, and there were people around me that were depressed and unconnected. I wouldn't have used that word then, but looking back, they were unconnected, but I didn't know what they were, but I knew they were. I felt a sense of loss for them, and so I just wanted to go out and meet more and more people, and I just wanted to know I could help people not feel that pain, not feel that lostness, and not feel that separation that perhaps I was feeling myself. And that's where it started. Yeah.
So you little Jane joining every single club that she could, every sports club, the guides and the clubs, and you saw people being unconnected or disconnected around you. So did you feel disconnected and this was your way to find it? Or
Yeah, and I still am working through, I suppose what would be what I feel like was abandonment. At the age of 7, I asked for my birth certificate because I thought I was adopted. I wasn't. I didn't look like a lot of my family until later on in my life, and it was a standing joke that I was adopted. There's no photos of me until I'm at school. My first photo is when I'm at school, and there's no birthday cards. So I had a real sense of not belonging, and none of my friends knew about it. No one knew about it. We had a family where my door was open. Our door was always open. My dad would say, I'd fetch like 13 people home from a nightclub, and they'd be accommodated, but I felt left out. I felt not part of my own family, so I strove to be part of other families, if you like. Yeah. And other communities. I needed that. So yeah, and but I saw that in different pockets of the council estate, and I saw it growing within little pockets of my own community. And I can remember looking out, and I was about 15 or 16. I looked out my back bedroom window, and in the back garden of somebody else's house, backing onto us, and the huge gardens, council estates gardens, we had an allotment and everything in ours. There was a young lad, and he was out cold in his dad's veg patch, and I knew there and then that he'd sniffed glue, and I ran and I ran, and he was okay afterwards. I mean, we got the ambulance and everything, but it was a real pertinent part. I didn't know that would connect me later on to choose to work in addictions. But when I look back at that day, that young lad and that disconnect led me to work not only in psychiatry but then specialize in addictions. Yeah, my childhood had a profound effect on my my future purpose. I'm now grasping.
So this kind of disconnect or not belonging, and your older brothers and sisters didn't feel this. What do you think was happening in your family with your parents for you to feel that? Why did that happen?
This came through to me in breathwork. I think I was one too many. I don't think I was unloved, but I wasn't wanted. I don't know if that makes sense. It's a standing joke that I was called power cut. Apparently the telly broke down. I'm not sure if it's true, but all these little jokes were constant all the way through my childhood. Like I apparently looked Chinese. There was lots of things, and they were constant little jokes, and they still go on now. I'm 53. They still go on now. They're fetched up, and that constantly in your mind as a child, you start thinking, do I belong here? Do I look like them? No, I don't. I do look slightly Chinese sometimes. Do I? And all that goes through your mind as a child. So that disconnect, but also my dad was ill, so my mum was the breadwinner. Neither of them would claim benefits. They were too proud, and my mum had 3 to 4 jobs. So she didn't have time for me as the 5th child, and at some point I always looked like I was coping. I was very resourceful. I was very resilient. I'd go and find groups. I'd be part. So I was always doing some. I was always out in nature. I was always busy. So on the surface, it looked great. It looked great. Inside, it was like, I want to be part of something. Just somebody let me be part of something. So yeah.
I really feel that. I can really feel that little Jane just wanting to belong and wanting to be loved. I mean, loved and not just loved, but wanting to be wanted.
Wanted. Yeah, there is that's only just come through actually just then when we was talking, Ben, that actually there was love in the house, but being wanted was a greater thing for me.
Can we just like acknowledge little Jane here wanting to be wanted and desperately going out and finding that in different places with different people? Let's just take some breaths with her. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad she's here with us. That makes me feel really good, because she seems like a really, what's the saying? Something like, our biggest struggles or our biggest wounds become our biggest gifts that we can bring out into the world. And it seems throughout your life you have dedicated, your life to helping others in different ways, from that boy who had sniffed glue to a long period when you were nursing. So maybe tell us a little bit about that middle part of your life. So we've seen where you are now. You've just reclaimed your strength and your power, and we've heard about little Jane. Tell us about the middle section.
I left home. I always knew I wasn't going to live in Doncaster. I think I had a purpose to escape. And yeah, I became a psychiatric nurse, and I lived in the nurse home for a long time. And then I got married, and yeah, it was happy for a long time, and I lost myself within that. I think I totally wanted to be loved, that I lost myself within that. And I think some of my friends said, why do you go back to Dave, my ex-husband? Because I constantly went back, and I became a Stepford wife, and that was their words, because I started acting things, and the only time I was myself was when I was kind of at work. And then there was a point where work changed massively. The NHS has made change massively, and sort of 10 years ago, addictions changed massively. Well, 15 years ago, where we were constantly being bid for, and it all became resource management and money management, and not service user centered. And I wasn't given time to work with people. It was all about in, out, detox. It became very much a process as opposed to helping people. And I totally lost connection with myself and my core beliefs and morals, and I literally became a robot. And I became quite severely depressed, but I had a son to look after. So it's very much on automatum. I'd just go in, do it, come out, get the money, and that became my life in all aspects. I became totally disconnected to myself and my heart space, other than when I was kind of with Josh, my son, or with my dogs. So yeah, I kind of lost myself within that middle space, and depression kicked in, and it was a very dark area. And I'd wake up every day wishing I woke up for at least about 10 years every day, disappointed that I hadn't died in my sleep. It was that dark.
Just stop there a second. You woke up every day disappointed that you were still alive and you hadn't died in your sleep.
Yeah, it was that dark. I
think we need to have another breath with that, Jane, as well, don't we? Let's let that Jane feel our love as well. So Jane, there will be some people who watch this, and those words will just hit them like a sledgehammer, because they're in that same place as well. What would you say to someone who is experiencing that right now?
I would say sit back and try and connect with your child, and who you authentically were before you had to fit in or be. And also, one of the most profound realizations I had was that I didn't want to die. I wanted that life to die. I didn't want to end my life. I wanted to end that life. And that is a massive realization, that I wanted to end the life that didn't belong to me. It wasn't my life I was living. It was a life I had taken on board so I could survive in the world. I was existing, and I had to change that. I no longer wanted to exist. I wanted to live. And it's massive. It's a massive thing, that, because it's the total opposite to what I was feeling every day. I would wake up and I'd cry. I'd cry before I'd go into work, because I wanted to die in my sleep, because I couldn't go on anymore. However, what I really wanted to do was live. I didn't want to end my life. I wanted to end that life.
That's very profound, really profound, what you just said. So you didn't want your life to end, you wanted that life to end. You wanted your current life to end. And that is, so for someone who's in that situation, it's not your life that you want to end, you want to look the life that you're currently living. Yes. And it's a subtle distinction, but it's so powerful, Jane.
Mm.
And did that realization come quickly, or was it just a slow build, or what happened?
It was a slow build, and it's something that's come out through breath work. It really is things. It has been things that I've worked through the breath that made me realize that I wasn't living to my true potential or my true purpose. I'd lost myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, the other thing that you said was, to someone who's in that situation, is sit back and reconnect with that child in you who was, itself before you had to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
Which is another really beautiful thing to say.
And it sounds really funny, because just before that, I was describing somewhere where I was disconnected from my family and I'm dealing with abandonment. But actually, within all of that, I was always myself. I'd go out in nature and I'd absorb, I'd play. I would be connected to little Jane in every way when I was out in nature, or when I was with my friends, and when I was, I was free. And that there's that sense of finding that, reconnecting to that part of you, that then that remembrance of freedom, as opposed to being what society wants you to be.
Mm-hmm.
Those parameters, that box, that's what when I got back in touch with that, I started working back from that. Yes, there's another part of that childhood that's abandonment that I need to deal with, that's painful, but the real love, the real self-love, wow, that just came through. The real self-love was that child.
Remembering the freedom that you said, rather than what society expects of you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can we have a breath with just remembering that freedom of what it was like to be like that before we started doing what we was expected of us? Yeah, I'd like to have a breath with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you, Jane. Like, you're saying some very powerful words here that I know will speak to people. And so I hope you don't mind me just kind of stopping every so often just to take that in, because it's like it's hitting me right here when I hear you speak. Okay, so you've mentioned it a couple of times, and it's through your exploration of breath that you really started making these realizations, and you started to move from that middle period of your life to where you are now. Now, you've mentioned Steph by name. This is Steph Magenta. Maybe could you just maybe for people explain how you met Steph, or how you started breathing with Steph, and that change that happened through that process.
Yeah. So I had a bit of a breakdown, and I started looking for things to do, things to heal. I'd always looked out into the holistic field, which is really weird for someone in the medical profession, but I'd always looked out into the holistic field, and I went on a dream quest. It was a short one. It was 2.5 hours. I again got stuck in traffic on the way home from work, one-way system in Liverpool, not going to get there, nearly gave up, arrived late, and we did a drum journey with breath work. It wasn't a long one, and just changed my life. I was like, I connected. It was I connected with something that I knew I'd lost. I literally remembered. I found a part of me in the space of a 30-minute breathwork session that I'd lost, and I was just overwhelmed by that reconnection that I had. And so, yeah, then I started going to Steph's workshops and other things. And then I did a 2-day workshop with Anthony, The Hero's Journey. Continue to do at least a monthly breathe with Steph. Did Seeds of Alchemy with Susie, and then found Susie's work, Susie Poyser, and then started also doing breathwork and gongs with Susie and Martin. So I kind of, over the last 2 years, I've built up. We're so blessed in the Northwest. We've got so many great breath workers. I built up a regular healing space with Steph, Susie. I also found my friend Sharon was doing inner dance, which is crosses over to with the breath work. So it's very similar, but without doing the breath. And I just started reconnecting and releasing an awful lot of trauma. I really had full energy trauma release, almost like energy orgasms. I describe them, and I looked back because my breath work's different now. It comes in differently, but in the first year, the energy that was coming through me was like, I felt like I was in a cage. And I have a vision looking back of where, if you imagine my ribs were metal and they were holding me in, I imagine myself, I see myself, this is what I see that year as those popping open and releasing all the mucky stuff that was oppressing me and keeping me down, so I could start really doing the work. So the stuckness it blew away, and I didn't have to dig for it. I didn't have to go to hurt places. The breath found it for me. Because what I was finding in counselling was, well, I was bullshitting, to be fair. I'd been working in a field where I knew how people had I use CBT, I use counselling, I knew the game and I was playing it. Breathwork doesn't allow you to play the game.
Breathwork doesn't allow you to play the game. Yeah, and what a position to be in. So you're counselling and working with addiction and people who are, strongly mentally ill, and yet you're phoning it in and not showing up and struggling yourself. And then you start doing this breath work with some amazing facilitators. So this is Stephanie Magenta and Anthony Abagnano of Alchemy of Breath, and Susie Poyser. So we'll drop their names in at the bottom of this interview in the comments, because they're all colleagues of mine and I really fully support them and how magnificent they are. And yeah, you are lucky up in the Northwest with all these magical people. Okay, so that kind of really starts to give me a bit of a kind of clearer picture of your life, Jane. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, that is a journey. That is a hard journey to go through. And it's not a journey that, some people will do that journey in 6 months. You took that burden and you carried it for a long time, for yourself and for your son and for all the people you were working with. When I think about that, 10 years or more, not being who you wanted to be, carrying that for other people, that is a journey, Jane, isn't it?
I've never thought about. Might have to breathe into that one.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that when I was going through it. I just did it, and I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
It felt right. It was my purpose. But to lose myself within that purpose was where things started to, yeah, that's where I needed, that's where something had to give. And that's, I think, where the depression came in and grounded me, not in a nice way.
Yeah.
So I'd
Anchored you,
listen.
or yeah, strapped you
Yeah,
down and held you
strapped me
down
down
and
and held me down until I'd listen. Because,
smacked you in the face with it.
yeah, one of my friends said that. She said, for 10 years, I watched the universe put you down. She said, on 5 occasions, you should never have got back up, and you just did. And it was she said it was one of the most painful things for her.
Frustrating things.
Yeah, she said it was the most painful and frustrating thing to watch because she couldn't intervene. It had to be me. It had to be me that intervened.
Yeah. So the title of these interviews I'm doing is inspiring people, because to hear people's stories, it is really inspiring. To hear how how you struggled on for that amount of time and then reconnected with little Jane. We'll be bringing. There will be people who watch this, Jane, who are in the middle of that, who are coming out the other end of it or about to start doing that. So that is really, magical for people to hear that and to know that you're there and there is something else. So thank you for that. We're gonna have to take another breath with that now.
Okay.
Yeah, feel it. Can you feel that? I'm really feeling it. Okay, let's take one more breath and then we'll move on. Okay, so I'll ask a couple of quick questions now.
Okay.
And then we're going to move over to Facebook Live, and I'm going to ask you particular questions about who inspired you then and now, and what you would like to inspire in others. But let's ask you a couple of quick fire questions. Could you choose a number between 4 and 15 for me?
4.
4. Okay. Tell me about a wound or a scar that you've got.
Oh, I think I've dealt with that. The abandonment
You have.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the next one. What do you think is worth dying for? What would you lay down your life for, Jane?
Do you know, this question I found really hard, and the obvious one is my son. Yeah. So the obvious one is Josh. But something keeps coming through at the moment about the state of the world and the planet, and I am guided very much by nature. So yeah, if I had to, I think to turn things around, then I would, for the planet. I really would lay myself down there. We've got to make some big changes, and we're not always listening to what's happening, and we're not necessarily making the right changes. So yeah, I could see myself doing it for that, because for the future of my son, my grandchildren, and you know what, even if the humans get wiped out, this planet will still be here. And that for me is powerful, and I'd lay myself down for that. But my son, obviously.
Yeah, let's just touch on that. Let's talk about, because there'll be people watching, myself included. I don't have a son. Tell me about what that feeling of love, like, when you love someone so much you would lay down their life for them. Tell me what it's like to love someone that much.
It's it's so innate. It's really hard to explain, because it doesn't even it's not even a second thought. It's a first thought, and it's there's something, I don't know, there's something very special. There's a connection, and even my husband got jealous of this. There's a connection as a mother that you have right from that egg of your child being there, and possibly before, because that egg's always with you. And I couldn't explain this to my husband, but when you're carrying that baby and it's grown inside you, it's a whole life, and there's a whole set of protection that I didn't know I had. I didn't know I would do that for somebody, that just that I become an afterthought, but also I'm learning that I need to be a forethought so I can protect him. So there's lots of things, but it's just so innate. There's something so profound when you hold your baby, and I wrote something down because there's another question, but I wrote something down, so I'm going to fetch it in, about a really important part in my life, and that was when Josh was put on my breast and he was still attached to the umbilical cord, and he just took to it, thank God. And but what came over was this massive connection that I'd never felt to anything, because I was struggling to feel love. And there was something, the breast, me, my baby, and my umbilical cord all being attached, all being circular. That connection is just, there's nothing else like it, and it is undescribable, and it is something I would never want to lose. And it's that power of not wanting to lose that connection, that deep heartfelt connection of something I grew within me and was always part of me, because that egg was always part of me, that I can't, it's just that, I can't describe it, but it's that.
That does sound really powerful, to have your son's, feeding and latching on whilst still attached really to you.
Mm.
That connection.
Yeah. And that never goes. That umbilical cord never goes. It's transparent. It's not there, but it never goes. It's always there.
Mm.
And as I say, there's something so beautiful about being a mother, because that egg, you're connected to that way before you're going to give birth. And there's something about that for me, that's really powerful within me, that I know I grew him from scratch.
Oh yeah, I can feel that. I can feel that love, and that is worth dying for,
Mm.
and laying down your life for.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Jane, that's been quite an adventure, this 45 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's gone really quickly.
Yeah, it's gone really quickly, and that's really quite an inspiring story that you told there. Your journey. So thank you really for sharing that with everyone. It's very, very powerful. So what we're going to do now, we'll bring this part of the interview to close, but we're going to hop over onto Facebook Live, and I'm going to ask you questions about who particularly inspired you, if there's particular stories about people that you would like to share. But before we go to that, just on this part of the interview, is it okay just to take 3 more breaths together?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Thank you, Jane.
Thank
Now,
you.
don't go away anywhere.